All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to be working on section 4.4, graphing linear equations in slope-intercept form. So there are two things that you need to know for this slope-intercept form. It is when you have an equation given to you in the form of y equals mx plus b, you can find your slope simply by looking at the coefficient of x, meaning what is the number in front of the x. Now remember, the slope, we would like it to be a rise over a run, which is the change in y over the change in x, which means if it is not a fraction, let's say it's a whole number of 2, you can simply put a 1 underneath it, so 2 over 1 would be your rise over your run. So your slope is 2 over 1. And then your b, the b is simply at the back, which is called your y-intercept. And if you remember the intercepts, it's where the line touches the axis. So the y-intercept is where the line touches the y-axis. Speaking with another math teacher friend who teaches at Woodcrest, he said some of his students could not simply identify the y-intercept being the number at the back. And I know that our Townsend junior high students are going to rock this information here. All right, give you just another moment to go ahead and write down any information that you need from this slide here. Again, slope and y-intercept. All right, so part of your information is really basic. It's giving you the slope and it's giving you the y-intercept. So it wants you to practice writing your equation given that information. Later on, we'll make it more advanced where you do not know your slope, you do not know your y-intercept. So there's a lot more work involved. But if you can write your equation given this or these two pieces of information, you'll be that much better prepared for later on. So if you remember, it's simply y equals mx plus b, and then we'll put our numbers simply where they belong. Now remember, in graphing, our slope would really be 2 over 1 because we want to rise over a run when we graph. But when we write our equation, we actually want it to be the most simplified form. So that's why it says my slope is 2 instead of 2 over 1. My y-intercept is a negative value, so it means when I put my numbers in the correct spot, remember, we don't really want double signs. So my answer would be y is equal to 2x, and then just a subtract 3. We don't want a plus and negative there. All right, let's try another one. Just really quick again, our slope is given to us as a fraction. We ask ourselves, is it in the most simplified version? And of course it is. Remember, if it was 4 over 6, you would have to reduce it to be 2 over 3. And then my y-intercept is 7. So it means we need to go ahead and write our equation from y equals mx plus b and just put our numbers in the spot that it needs to be put. So I just replace it, and I now have y equals 2/3 x plus 7. Now, there's a few things that we can draw attention to. First of all, we notice that both slopes are positive, so that means if you were looking at a graph, they would both be uphill. As we're going to talk more about it this week is how can we determine if the hill, whether it's going uphill or downhill, would be a steep slope. And what we're going to discover is if we have an improper fraction, we would have a steep line or a really big hill that we would have to climb up. So as we've already discussed, our positive slope is going uphill. So our information today, again, is as we use our slope, which again is called the rise over run, I'm going to have to put some points that follow a simple pattern. And if it's a positive slope, it's going to be going uphill. So our movement in counting would be up and then always to the right. Our rise is either up or down, but our run is always to the right. So let's see. Go ahead and put a random starting point off to the right here. Somewhere over here, put a little point to start, like this. And then when we count a positive slope, again, it is up and to the right. So make these arrows to symbolize that you would be counting up. Maybe it's 1 space, 2 spaces, whatever. And then you would count to the right. So put those arrows there. That will remind you what you should be doing on your homework tonight. Up and then to the right. And then you put another nice point. But for when we're doing our graphing today, we need a total of 3 points. So we're going to do it again. So that means we would count up the same amount of spaces as the initial counting up. And then we would count to the right the same amount of spaces as well. And that would give me my third and final dot. what you're going to notice is that some students are going to actually get into the advanced counting, which would be backwards counting. So that means that would be over here going backwards. So let's say if you go up 1 and right 3, the backwards counting would be down 1, left 3. So that would give you another point that would line up with the 3 that you just found, and it'll make it beautiful. All right, negative slope, very similar in that we have a starting point, but instead of counting up and right, we're actually going to count down and then right. Because we've already talked about how a negative slope is going downhill, so let's go ahead and show what that would look like. Find a starting point off to the right, and then go ahead and make an arrow down, and then we're still counting to the right. Don't count to the left. That would be the backwards counting. All right, let's do it one more time to find our third and final dot. We're going to count down, and then we're going to count to the right. Once you have your 3 or more dots, you will actually be able to make your line with your arrows, with your equation, and I'm going to show you what one of the homework sample problems is going to look like for you to complete. All right, so let's go ahead and try a few problems together. Again, we're breaking up this section into a total of 2 days. So first day is when you have it already in slope-intercept form. So that means I have my equation given to me. All I have to do is find my m, which is my slope, and my b, which is my y-intercept. So let's go ahead and label that down. Go ahead and write down m equals and b equals. So m equals one line, b equals another line. And then again, all we're going to do is do the reverse of what we did on example A and B, and I'm going to write down what I see. My slope is the number in front of the x, so that means m is equal to -2/3, while b, my y-intercept, is +5. So off to the side of your notes, I need you to go ahead and make a small sketch. You can estimate it, which means you don't have to put your dashes or your numbers if you don't want to. I do need your x-axis and your y-axis with some arrows. And the way we do it again is we start off with our y-intercept, which is the b value. That's going to be my beginning point. So that means on my y-axis, I find my correct number to plot. My y-intercept is 5, or specifically 0, 5, so I put my first point there. And then according to my slope, I count down to right 3. So let's go ahead and do that. If you have to estimate where it's going to be, go ahead and count down to right 3. On your homework, it's going to be very exact. You're going to be given some good coordinate planes that, again, you're going to count down to right 3. If you notice, I didn't have to put my arrows because I know the movement that I'm counting is just down and right. Let's do it one more time. Count down to and right 3. If you notice, this one for me goes a little bit off, but that's okay. Once you're ready, go ahead and take your straight edge and make your line with your arrows and your equation. I'll give you a moment to catch up. All right, let's try a few more before we talk about your homework. All right, this one here, y equals 2x subtract 1. So again, in order to graph it, I need to know my slope, excuse me, which is going to be rise over run. So my 2 is going to have to change into a fraction. And again, that's when I want to graph it. When I'm writing an equation, it's going to be slightly different. And then my b is going to be a -1. So let's make a little sketch and let's do a little graph. So go to make your x-axis, y-axis, and we'll start our graphing in about 20 seconds. Our first point again is going to be our y-intercept, which is the b value, which is going to be on the y-axis. So my y-intercept is actually technically 0, -1, which would be located here. Then to find my next 2 points, again, I'm going to use my slope. Since my slope is positive, I'm going to be counting uphill. So it's going to be up and to the right. So I'm going to go ahead and count up 2 spaces and right 1 space. So let's do that together. Count up 1, 2, right 1. So put your dot at 1, 1. I repeat the process again. Up 1, 2, right 1. That point is at x is 2, y is 3. If you notice, this would be a really steep hill going uphill. And the reason we have that is because it's an improper fraction. So if it was 5/2, or maybe even just 3/2, it would be considered steep because it's an improper fraction. Make your line, your arrows, and your equation. All right, moving on. This one here, if you notice, it is negative slope, so it means it's going to be going downhill. And just a quick observation, I do have an improper fraction, so it is going to be a little steep. I don't think it'll be as steep as the 2/1. But let's observe. All right, so we write down our equation. We write down m and b. Our slope is -4/3. Our y-intercept is +3. All right, so let's make a quick sketch of our graph. Again, you're going to do this exact same stuff on your homework today. Tomorrow's going to be a little bit more complicated. So start off strong with this day. So our starting point, again, is on the y-axis at 3, or specifically 0, 3 is the ordered pair. My slope is downhill because it's negative, so it means I'm going to count down 4, right 3. So it's going to be down 1, 2, 3, 4, right 1, 2, 3. So my location is the x is 3 and the y is -1. Then we do it again. We count down 4, right 3. So again, back here, down 1, 2, 3, 4, right 1, 2, 3. So it's going a little bit off this one. So my location would be x is 6 and y is -5. Again, going to make your line edge to edge the best that you can with your arrow and your equation. Again, graphing lines in slope-intercept form should be relatively quickly, or should be finished relatively quickly. Let's talk about what your homework is going to look like. So if you notice on this one here, it's the exact same type of problem. It's already in slope-intercept form. So on your homework, on the worksheet, you'll come off to the side here and simply write m equals, and that's going to be 2/3, which is going to be uphill. And then you would write b equals 1, so that you can actually complete the information that I need from you. So it means your starting point would be here on the y-axis as 1, and then you would go uphill. Let me see if I can make a point here. No! We'll go back to that slide. There we go. So once you have completed it, just like you had on your quiz last week, just like you're going to have on your quiz this week, you need to notice which line or which letter the line would be touching. If you do it correctly, it should touch one of those letters, which will help spell out the answer to the riddle. You're going to have to do the same thing on your quiz. So if it touches letter A, B, C, D on your quiz, that's the letter that you will bubble in for your quiz answer. All right, so you're going to go ahead and complete this to the best of your ability once you have received the worksheet.